Most people drink because other people did, and then they started too. It's a societal norm. Then roll the clock forward by 5, 10, 15, 20 years, then you've taken a drug more frequently than once every fortnight for decades.
Hmm.
So, what I'm curious about is when it comes to your story, and if it's not related at all, you can also go a different direction, but how did that societal aspect, how normalized it is, impact your story in terms
Oh,
of the trajectory?
yeah, completely. And I have a tendency to ramble, so jump in and interrupt me like literally midstream if I'm getting too far off the track. You'll know. Um, so, a couple of things. Let me start by saying I'm not real good with like math and stats and figures. I'm not a data type of person. I don't recall those. So, just kind of like right up front, I know, Ranger, you've got a lot of resources. You'll refer to a lot of things. But right up front, as you and I have this conversation today, if you want like facts, figures, data, and stuff like that, three resources to check out. Thesoberclub.com is a URL, and that is you can find all kinds of just really great resources there, facts, figures, information, research cited, all the good things. Annie Grace, she's US based. She wrote a book called This Naked Mind. It was the beginning of her little enterprise, big enterprise, I should say, on sober movement. So she opens her book right with some of these facts, figures, and statistics. And then the third and final one that I'll reference here is Alcohol Explained by William Porter, and he's UK based. And all of these are great places to go. Check out their book, look at their social media platforms, their websites, and so forth. If you want to like fact check anything that we're talking about here today, because I'll share my personal experiences and I'll share anecdotal things that I know I've heard or that are part of the mainstream conversation. So with that
Yeah,
said,
don't come for pitchforks if we say a number wrong. Everything that you mentioned, I will also put in the show notes with a link. And when I do the write up for the web article that I'm going to do on the website, I'll have all this information so people can double check. And if there's anything that is wrong that
perfect.
we say, I will make a note in the show notes or on that blog post.
Perfect. And again, those are just the three that are easiest for me to, first of all, the three that have been most impactful for me. Let me acknowledge right off the top.
Hmm.
And there are so many other resources. Those are just the three easiest for me to grab from memory. And they're super robust. But do your own research, seek your own community as well. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay. My story, social. So I grew up in a household full of drinkers. My mother didn't drink, but my brothers all drank. And these were folks who, like, it was that you have a hard job, you work all day in construction in the heat, you come home, you get a six pack, you go home, you unwind, you let steam out, and so forth. Interestingly, though, growing up in that household, I never was attracted to the drinking. And so I kind of grew up being Mr. Buttoned Up, straight laced people pleaser. Like, I'm going to be the good one. I'm going to be the good one. That, we can have 40 other podcasts to talk about all that. But I was like, I'm never going to drink. And what was interesting is I didn't. I was 23 years old and in the midst of some other transitions in my life and kind of emerging from a cocoon, as well as my coming out story and so forth. And I remember I then bonded with a community of friends and had a new friend in particular that was hanging out with a lot. And this person drank. And I remember one day we were going to do something social. We were going to some clubs or something like that. And I was like, you know what? Let me have one of those. And I remember saying, I need a drink because I needed to deal with my family. Now, I don't even remember what was going on at that time. Probably nothing other than family drama, right? The usual. But I didn't even start drinking until I was 23. And I didn't do it for any other reason than I just wanted to fit in. And that began my relationship with alcohol. And then, when you think about the social element of it, so I started kind of experimenting and I was drinking then because that was something my friend and I did. And my friend was cool and hip and I liked who that person was when they were drinking. And then it's like, maybe I can be cool like them too, right? Then as my coming out story emerged and I started socializing, particularly in the gay community, and I don't say this to demonize it, I just simply state it as a matter of observation, in fact, of that era in which I was in. is that once I started socializing, in that day and time, it was before we had all of the robust resources we have today. You went to bars. That's where you met people. And the culture was you went to bars, you drank cocktails. It was all about fabulousness of cocktails and parties and entertaining and so forth. So then it was, okay, well, my community is all about drinking. And then I go into my career in the corporate workspace expanded. And then it was all about the work hard, play hard, go out for drinks afterwards, happy hour. I had a job that involved traveling. So then in those days, this was before companies stopped reimbursing for alcohol. You were allowed like a certain amount. You could have 1 or 2 drinks with your dinner or something like that. But if you were traveling on the road and you worked hard, you went out to dinner. And then it's like, of course, you're going to have a cocktail or two with dinner because A, you already do. And B, now it's a work social thing. Then you get into the work conferences, events, drinking again. And then as I got closer to kind of the crest of my journey and then ultimately the end of my relationship with alcohol, then it was now I've built circles of friends that the thing that we have in common is drinking. Then I became the person who I would socialize and find new friends, even in work settings. But when I found out they also drank, that's when I would propose the happy hour, let's get together for wine or what have you. So I used to joke about how I would convert my work friends to social friends because we drank together. And it was always about that. And then the last thing I'll say before I pause is, and then if it wasn't those physical dynamics, then it was the things like the TV shows that I watched, the movies that I watched, or the types of products that I like to purchase or whatever. We're all celebrating, promoting, glorifying alcohol, particularly in my later years when I had really kind of just graduated down to just drinking wine. And, we know here in the US, particularly here in California, I mean, wine is, almost like a rite of passage. And so it's just socially, that was what got me into it. That's what continued to support and reinforce it. And then I got to a point where I didn't need the social element anymore because it was me and that bottle of wine. So anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah. So there's definitely some similarities there. That family aspect, because there's a story that I heard where there's two twin boys. One of them grows up to be a raging alcoholic, and the other one never had a sip in his life. And when
Mm-hmm.
asked why they don't drink, the alcoholic says, "Well, my dad did." And when asked why he doesn't drink, the sober one said, "Well, my dad did."
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that familial aspect. So I'm just kind of wondering, like, why? God, I was going to say, like, why that transition later on? I mean, you answered it, but like, what judgments did you kind of have around it? I guess, like, what?
Yeah. Well, let me answer that question the way I think you're asking it, and let me also acknowledge something too, because you and I both know we could finish this whole podcast and more by continuing go down the why path. Why did I start? Why did I do it, and so forth. I definitely encourage us to get into a place of being able to say, it is what it is. Let's acknowledge that it's happening, and where do I want to go with it? Okay, so what judgments did I have? Why did I start drinking? What judgments did I have? Initially, the judgments that I had was the observations that I had made growing up around drinkers was, after a couple, then you couldn't predict what the behavior was going to be, nor could they. It didn't always, with excessive consumption, it didn't always go in really great outcomes. And I'm not here to demonize those my family members about that. I just had made a choice based on the things that I saw that I didn't like and I didn't want for myself. When I started drinking, then there was the judgment of, oh, I probably shouldn't be doing this. But now I've kind of gone into my, look at me, I'm a bad boy kind of phase. And now I'm being a little bit of a rebel because I never was all those years, remember? And then what's interesting is then I would say that for the next 25 years that I was in this relationship with alcohol, I would have told you then I didn't have judgments. I would have told you then I kind of judged the people who didn't drink because this was what I did, and it was cool, and it was fun, and everybody's doing it, and so forth. But deep down inside, even when I would champion drinking or defend it or say it was cool and all those things, there was still a part of me deep down inside that always knew it's like, this really isn't the best thing for me. And I had said many times before that, oh, if I ever do quit drinking, nobody's life ever got worse because they quit